Thank you very much indeed. So good morning, everybody. It's a delight to be here. The conversation we're having today is about caring for and looking after somebody who has a Cavernoma. And so what I've tried to do is to create a presentation so that we can have a discussion, but it's a very personal one from me. I don't have a Cavernoma, but clearly I'm on the periphery. And I think, like so many other people, those people who have a partner who has been diagnosed, whether it's long-term or short-term, it doesn't matter. We don't know. We're not necessarily having the same conversations in our head as that person is with themselves. So what I've tried to do is to put a presentation together that says, this is how I feel about it. And as we were just saying, if there's something that you want to make a note of, or indeed if you have a piece of a pen and a piece of paper, then please feel free to make as many notes as you like. I have said to Elsa that I will make this presentation available to anybody who wants it. So if you decide at the end of this you'd like a copy of the presentation, just ask Elsa and she'll make it suitably available to you. So let me just share my screen with you and we can just have a quick run through where we are. So my presentation is about living with and caring for somebody who has a Cavernoma. So I'm Paul. And the idea behind this is to understand that we've been on a journey in much the same way as David and Pat did with their moving presentation last week. We've been on a journey, but it's nowhere near as challenging as theirs. However, and one thing we know for sure is that when you look at brain lateralization, anything that happens on the left-hand side of the brain can have quite an impact upon logic, detail, some verbal disagreements, planning, vision, if you like, to a certain extent, and the right-hand side motor skills. So things like writing become rather more difficult. And that's where the Cavernoma did do some damage. So the Cavernoma was just here. You can see this is an MRI. It looks as if it's on the right, but bear in mind with an MRI, it's looking from the bottom upwards. So the MRI is located here. You can see that dark patch. It's empty now. I've lost the photograph for the first one, but that was bright white. It was filled with blood and it had a ring around it where the blood had seeped and was causing damage to the brain tissue. So you can see by its location, it's quite central. So if you like, it's above her ear and it follows a line through the eye. So it's really, really central. And that's why no surgery was possible. And it had a dimension which was sort of greater than 15 millimeters, so 1.5 centimeters. So that's our story so far. The diagnosis had an impact upon us. And so what I'd like to do, ladies and gentlemen, is just for a moment, ask Elsa to switch off the recording. Everybody said similar to where we were and the people that I've spoken to since. And you get all those feelings of shock, anxiety, awareness, and you start talking about a Cavel what? Where does that? Where do we go from here? Those questions of, is it going to be life-changing and will it have an impact upon what I can do? But also people start thinking about, where do I fit into a social dynamic? So what impact will it have upon my friends and my family? Does it create a social stigma? But more than that, you think there is relief because it gives you a way ahead. If you like, one of the negatives could be, do I understand the neuro-language and how's that going to affect my emotions? Am I in control of it? Will it change my personality? And is it going to have an impact upon relationships? And so the point of bringing this brainstorm together was to say, actually, there's a lot that happens which gave me the opportunity to relate it back to my former career. Similarly, when we've had these conversations, I have spoken to members, and if you permit me to, this is an abridged version of some of the negative feedback that I've had in conversations over the last 5 years. Somebody said only just recently, my partner just doesn't get it. So this is a person who had a Cavernoma and their partner just didn't seem to get it. I heard somebody say that they don't know what to say to me. So it was almost as if it was an elephant in the room. They didn't know how to discuss it. Somebody said to me, and quite rightly too, that they thought the relationship seems to have changed. Another person said about 2 years ago, it seems that they, as in the partner without the Cavernoma, they are more affected by it than I am. And then similarly, we feel that perhaps they could be more supportive. And the reason for showing you those is that there is a hard fact about this, in that it's not just about them. The family, the whole network is involved in this around the person who's just been diagnosed with a Cavernoma. And so therefore, that's the view that we take. Jill and I, we look at this as a pair, as a partnership. Our children are well informed about where we are, or where we were, and where we're going with the new one. But it's not just about Jill. It's not just about people with Cavernomas. It's about everybody else within the network. So I made reference to former career. I have been a management consultant for 20 years. And we use, in management studies, we use a lot of parent, adult, child analysis. And I'm going to recommend some reading on a similar subject a bit later. So I just wanted to share physical and emotional positioning using parent, adult, child. So in the first case, this is physical positioning. It may well be that we, the outsider, are the parent of somebody with a Cavernoma. We could be an adult living with somebody who has a Cavernoma, or indeed we could be the child of somebody who has a Cavernoma. So in terms of physical positioning, P, A, and C fit into that dynamic. But at an emotional level, you start thinking about parent. A parent responsibility is one of caring and nurturing. Almost an opposite of that, an adult could be a driving, inflexible, almost sometimes intolerant version of the emotional position. And the child is immature and perhaps in some cases somewhat needy. And so it struck me that, is there an interpretation that helps us to rationalize our responses, particularly with a newly diagnosed person, in terms of the parent, the adult, or the child mentality? And so I'd use this model here. At the top, you could say, if you have a caring, nurturing partnership, such as the one that we've tried to build, it works on the basis of, well, you're okay and I'm okay and we're working together. If one partner in the relationship is okay, but the other one is definitely not, then clearly there's a break. It could be the other way around. One thinks that they're not okay, but the other person appears to be okay, and we're not talking about it. And at the bottom, if you have two people who are both in denial, inflexible, immature, and both being needy, then clearly it can be very challenging, because I'm not okay and neither are you okay. And therefore that can have an impact upon lots and lots of things. And so what we try to do is to say, okay, as a parent, caring, nurturing mentality, sometimes that has to be learnt, but also we have to do this together. And I love the idea that when we start thinking about self-awareness and behavioural considerations, one has to start thinking about, well, how am I reacting? Am I reacting in a way, using a well-known used phrase here, the Caver phrase? Am I using a mentality which is adult? Am I challenging things? Am I avoiding, being vague? Am I excluding myself from the reality? Am I reticent? Am I in denial of this thing? Or am I taking a different view? Am I using a child mentality that says, I'm angry, my emotions are high, I'm trying to reject it, I'm complaining about everything that's going on. Am I using too much energy to express myself? Or when I think about my self-awareness, are we taking a parent Caver point of view? Caring, actively logical, versatile, empathic, and resilient to deliberately changing things for the worse. So I quite like the idea of the parent mentality is, for some people, one that has to be learned. But also it helps us to create this state of self-awareness. So parent strategies for adjusting to change. Yes, think about the smooth parent, the calm parent, the logical thinking parent. We start thinking about seeking awareness and openness, sharing things, but being honest with ourselves and as well as being honest with the other person. So sometimes that elephant in the room needs to be discussed. There is no doubt too that when we start talking about cavernomas and dementias, we absolutely have to make allowances for the other person, accepting the situation, which is what Ian talked about, but creating space too, where it's needed, space for conversation, space for realizations, space to rationalize. But some of the other parent strategies start saying about, well, am I sharing this with my friends? Am I sharing it with my family? Is my employer suitably informed about how I might behave at work? In our case, because we're both extrovert, we can add a lightness to it. We can add humor to it. And believe me, Pip gets the blame for a lot of things that go on in this house. So Pip gets the blame for a lot of things. But then also we're brave enough and courageous enough. I'm very proud of the fact that we will seek support. We will seek assistance. And things like the Caver Buddy, the role that I play, which is the Caver Partner Buddy, or Caver Chat, are really good mechanisms to help things through. And also being at home, caring and sharing and making sure that the responsibilities of the home are suitably addressed. They're absolutely critical things to do. So I'm just going to come on to a strategy in just a moment, ladies and gentlemen, but what are you thinking so far? So Elsa, if you just switch off the record, rationalize things. Well, as we said earlier on, I'm an extrovert, nurturing, thinking, and judgmentalist. Now, judgmentalist is not opinion-based, it's decision taker. So I'm an analytical decision taker. And I love to do things, because I'm only a simple boy from the Cotswolds, I love to do things in terms of pictures. And so you might have heard the cause and effect diagrams. You start thinking about, well, where do I go with this? At one end of this, there is an effect upon me. And all of you have mentioned in some way an effect that occurs upon you. And by the time you start to analyze it, it might well be that there is up to 6 potential causes of that effect. And because I work in a visual context, I love to see things, I find it very easy to do diagrams, and I make lots and lots of pictures of things that I need to address. So I call this the cause and effect diagram. It's a very famous mechanism for decision taking. And so if I do a practical one, this would be something that maybe you need to take on board as a potential solution to dealing with some of the issues for us who look after people who have a cavernoma. So for example, let's just take a situation where I had a serious bout of self-doubt. So that, you could say, is child mentality. I have to rationalize that and turn it into a parent. I have to look at it in terms of caring, logic, calm everything down, and take decisions about, well, okay, what could be the things then that are causing my self-doubt? Could it be, as you so rightly said earlier on, I fear the unknown? Could it be, actually, I'm guilty about my own ability? I'm delving into something that I don't know, I don't understand, so therefore, am I responsible for that? So guilt of my own ability. It could well be that my self-doubt is based upon the fact that I don't know how the relationship will continue. In fact, I don't know about how the relationship's continuing because I never get time to sit and think about it to myself. Could it be then, if you rationalize where we're going with this, part of my self-doubt is about having been exposed to an unplanned event? We never in our life expect to be told the news that we're told. However, it's an unplanned event. And then what about the people that are telling me about this event? These are professionals, and I do not understand their language. I don't understand the concept of cavernoma. Therefore, I'm out of my depth. So this element of self-doubt comes out. As a result of this, you then go on to say, well, okay, what can I do about it? So in terms of the fear of the unknown, a parent mentality will say, okay, I need to read, find the appropriate materials. I need to find a support network. In our case, we found CAUK. So the parent mentality says, I seek to understand. I need to overcome the unknown factors. So similarly, if we analyze it sufficiently, we can go into guilt of my own ability. So I need to talk about it. I need to share how I feel. I need to reflect upon my esteem. So what I'm suggesting is, if I don't know about something, am I embarrassed? So that could be part of it. In terms of relationships, we need colleagues, we need children, family, partners around us. And therefore the parent mentality would say, well, I will nurture those relationships by being open, honest, and frank. Time to self, well, in most cases, this is much easier said than done, but better organized, setting specific objectives, a goal orientation, and indeed, every once in a while, saying no to other people around you, and create the time. After that, unplanned events. Well, as we now know with the COVID-19 situation, we are creating a new normal. And that mentality, as a logical parent mentality, applies to this. Create a new normal in which the Cavernoma sits, and expect odd events. Learn to anticipate that things will not be the same, but expect odd events, particularly behavioral events of the other person. And then when it comes to analysing my self-doubt in terms of the professionals, you have to understand that with the professionals, these are people who make a living. It's their career, so we should trust them. We should research them and what they do, and indeed reference them. Just talk about them to other people, and see what other people have experienced, particularly within the support network, as in CAUK. So for me, as an enthusiastic, nurturing, thinking decision taker, these are sort of the activities that I do that help me to change whatever it is the effect was, and I can develop my actions from there. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's one set of thoughts that I wanted to share with you. It's easier for me because being slightly more logical, slightly more organized in terms of my mental strokes, I can put things down and picture them. But you might have the ability to take that strategy and do something similar with it. But I think the one thing is you have to make a note of all those things that are bothering you. They're known as the effect, and find out what the causes of those effects are. Here's a list of completely unofficial and unaudited tips from me. These are just my thoughts. You know a bit more about me now, and I love to be able to identify and rationalize the causes of things that bother me. So cause and effect. And if I'm bothered by one thing, there's a very good chance that when you analyze it, you can find the reasons why they bother you. So parent mentality, identify, rationalize the causes of those things that bother you. From then, address them, think about them, discuss them, whatever it might be, but you have to identify them in the first place. Understand too, that as somebody who doesn't have a Cavernoma, it's tough to empathize with somebody who does. But the point is, we're more than spectators, and therefore the role that we play has to be more than a spectator, more than an outside contributor. We have to be part of it. So accepting and embracing the other person's Cavernoma, whether it's our parent, our child, or partner, rejecting our own denial of it, which comes back to bullet point number 2. We're far more than spectators in this. We have to reject our denial of it. I think the fourth bullet point says, there is no doubt we, as the people on the outside of this, have to have a higher self-awareness. So what's going on in my mind? Is my mentality child mentality? Reject, cry, be upset? Or is it adult and just want to get on with life? Put it somewhere else. Whereas the parent mentality says, I need to do something with it. So have a higher degree of self-awareness. What's going on in your mind? And work hard, if it's not a natural position, to take a rational parent positioning in all of this. From our point of view, extroverts, don't be afraid of humor. Personalize the Cavernoma. And as you now know, we call ours Pip. And Pip always did, and probably still does, get the blame for an awful lot of things that go wrong. We have a mantra. Resilient strength is the opposite of helplessness. And so that mantra, that strength of identifying what you need to do, how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it by, is the opposite of helplessness. And I feel so strongly that so many people do feel helpless in this situation. But resilient strength comes from within, and only you can deliver that. So a couple of bits of recommended reading. I'm a big fan of the first half of The Chimp Paradox. And for those of you that aren't familiar with The Chimp Paradox, Steve Peters deals with how we react to situations. Sometimes we're exposed to something, as we saw earlier, an unexpected event, and sometimes our reaction can be irrational. Steve Peters deals with that in the first half of the book. The second half of the book, I don't know, it's a bit of a tough read, but the first half of that book helps you to identify why we react in the way that we do react to unplanned events. Funny enough, this book came up the other day on one of the sessions. I think it was Ailsa's session. The Body Keeps the Score. It's a lovely read. It's a Penguin book. It's a lovely, easy read, but it's mind and brain and body working together to help rationalize things around us. And there's a really old book, came out about, I don't know, 25 years ago. It's called Walking the Tiger, and it's written by Peter Levine. And this book is where I sourced resilient strength is the opposite of helplessness. It's an interesting, old-fashioned, but quite a deep-seated read. And then just at the top there, if you go onto nhs.uk, there is a PDF, which is an anxiety PDF. It's a test, really, a document, from problems to solutions. So it's a PDF available at the NHS, 1U, Every Mind Matters, go to anxiety, and it's a downloadable PDF. So there are 4 quick little bits of reading material. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Living and caring for somebody with a Cavernoma, it's important. It's not just about them, but it is all about us. So thank you for your time.